Okay, welcome to the REDI Commission. Thank you all for attending tonight. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the flag salute with Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you. Please stand, put your right hand over your heart and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Deutsch,
Here.
Commissioner Eventov,
Here.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Here.
Commissioner Lecters,
Here.
Commissioner Pastorian is absent, Chair Steed,
Here.
and Commissioner Wilson. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And we will go ahead and any public comments on non-agenda items?
Yes, we do. We have one in-person public comment, and that will be Ron Larson.
Ready, set, go. I'm here tonight just to thank you for all you're doing for our country, our city, the issues you are facing, the criticisms you may face, the vituperation that may be thrown at you. I applaud you. Stay the course. Think long and hard about the things you're doing because it's important, not only to Temecula, but to our country. Thank you.
Chair Steed, we did receive one emailed public comment from Rick Reese, and we'll make that part of the record.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we're going to go along now and approve the minutes from the last meeting, if I can get a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion approved.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Faulkner and a second by Commissioner Lecters. I'll go ahead and take the roll call vote. Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Eventov,
Aye.
Vice Chair Faulkner,
Aye.
Commissioner Lecters,
Aye.
Commissioner Pastorian is absent, Chair Steed,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and go with our first business item of the evening.
Yes, Madam Chair. Tonight we have with us our Director of Finance, Jennifer Hennessy, and she's going to go ahead and conduct the item, business item number 2, receive and file our budget engagement session. And this is the opportunity for you all to provide general recommendations in regards to the budget. You'll recall the commission actually went through this exercise last year as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Hennessy.
All right. Thanks, Randy. All right. Good evening. Okay, so this is our budget engagement session. And what we do each year in the beginning of our budget process is we make a visit to each of the boards and commissions of the city, and we provide a brief overview of the city's budget process, some key budget policies, kind of the budget operating highlights for the current fiscal year, and then most importantly, we pose some questions to you all. I'll start with those questions, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll circle back to get your feedback on the questions as well as any questions you might have. So the discussion questions are, as a commissioner, do you feel that the city's investment in financial resources are in line with the community's priorities? And then if so, which programs or projects are most beneficial to the community? And if not, how could we better align the city's spending with the community priorities? So in January of each year, we start our budget development process, and what we do is we review the current year's budget as well as we start updating our 5-year financial projections that serve as a foundation for the ensuing fiscal year's budget. In February, we bring the mid-year budget update to the council for their review and approval, and that includes any adjustments to the current year's budget. So we review our revenues compared to what's happening in the economy, and if we see that adjustments need to be made, we'll bring those and make recommendations to the council for their adjustments. And then we also review the capital improvement program budget at the same time. And then during February and March is when we do the budget engagement sessions with each of the boards and commissions. And then through March and April, that's when staff is working to develop a proposed budget that's then presented to the council in May. At the end of May, we have our budget workshop. That's a daytime meeting to allow members of the public to come in, provide their commentary. And we also review the proposed 5-year capital improvement program at that workshop. And then finally, any adjustments that the council might have to the proposed budget, we incorporate into the adopted budget, which is presented to the council the first meeting in June of each year, along with the CIP. And then this becomes, once adopted, that becomes our official spending plan for the ensuing fiscal year. And then finally, throughout the year, we do ongoing analysis of revenues and expenditures and make any adjustments that are necessary to the budget throughout the year to keep it current. There's several tools that are utilized to build the budget. The first of which is the one in the middle, which is the prior year carryover. And what this represents is any projects or programs that were started in the prior fiscal year that may not have completed. We want to ensure that the funding is there in order to bring those projects to completion. So we'll first budget the prior year carryovers. And then we start taking feedback in from a variety of sources, one of which is a community satisfaction survey. This is a survey that is done of the residents of the community. It's done every so often, every few years. We are on track to do one this coming fiscal year. And from that survey, we get to get their input on what their highest priorities are, maybe what their largest concerns are, and we're sure to include those. We reflect that in the current budget to address those priorities and those concerns. I mentioned the board and commission feedback. We incorporate that into our proposed budget and relay that information up to the council so that they hear feedback directly from each of the boards and commissions and then your constituents as well. And then the city has a variety of programs and services master plans, such as the Community Services Master Plan. And in these, there might be programs or projects identified over the course of the next several years, and we want to make sure that we have reflected those in both our capital and our operating budgets as well. And then finally, city council policies. A few meetings ago, the council reaffirmed certain fiscal policies that affect how we build the budget, and that is reviewed each year in February by the council, and then again in May and June when they review the adopted budget. There's a few key deliverables that we developed during the budget process, the first of which is a preliminary budget. This is actually an internal document that includes all of the departmental requests for their budget. That's reviewed with the city manager during the month of March and April. And then his recommendations are reflected in what we call the proposed budget. And it's the proposed budget that is presented to the council in May. And that's where we will include any feedback that we get from the budget engagement session so that the council hears directly from each of the commissions. And then finally, as I mentioned, they adopt the budget in June, and that becomes the final operating budget and the final capital improvement budget for the year. This is the exhibit that will be presented to council. This is last year's budget engagement session feedback. So we highlight the points that are brought up in each of the budget engagement sessions, and then any theme that we feel or that we take input on and common suggestions from each of the different commissions are summarized in the middle. So we definitely see some common themes throughout the different commissions, one of which, and this is 2 to 3 years in the running, is public safety is our top priority, traffic congestion, and then ongoing community engagement. Those were the top 3 priorities that we saw throughout all of the budget engagement sessions last year. So we'll update this again after this round of sessions. So some key policies that are included in the budget document are what to do with available general fund balance. So following municipal accounting principles, we do fund accounting. The general fund is the city's primary operating fund. It's unrestricted so long as it's expended on things that benefit the community. So we have a policy in place to appropriate fund balance that is over and above our reserve levels. So it's called available general fund balance. The first priority is public safety, equipment, and our non-recurring programs. And why do we say non-recurring programs? Because general fund balance is considered a one-time pot of money, if you will. It's kind of like a savings account. So we want to make sure that we're comparing one-time monies with one-time uses. So all of these uses here would be considered one-time in nature. So public safety equipment or non-recurring programs, and then asset management reserves. This reflects several funds that we have set up in order to have enough money to replace assets when they've exhausted their useful life. So for instance, we have a fleet fund where we purchase all of our vehicles out of, and then in addition to purchasing the vehicles, we also recoup monies throughout the life of that vehicle so that when, after 10 years or so, when the vehicle is no longer useful, we have the funds to draw upon to purchase its replacement. So that's a good use of one-time money, is to feed those reserve funds in order to ensure there's adequate funding there. Capital improvement projects is the third item. And then the fourth and the fifth item relate to the pay down of city debt. I will go into this a little bit further in a few slides, but the reduction of both unfunded liabilities and city debt is a very good use of general fund balance. Not only does it reduce our debt capacity or our debt load, but it also reduces our ongoing operating expenditures, which you'll see in a few slides. Back in 2016, the voters approved a 1 cent sales tax called Measure S. The council at that time adopted these appropriation guidelines, and the councils ever since have affirmed that these guidelines are still in place, with public safety being top priority, asset management, capital projects, and then finally community services or general services. And then as time goes on, with public safety being the top priority, as costs in our contract may increase over time, less and less amount will be available for capital projects, as time goes on. So I mentioned debt and liability pay down. So we recently adopted, or the council recently adopted, a debt pay down strategy back in December. And in that month, we were able to appropriate available fund balance to pay down 2 of these items, as well as start paying down one of the third items. So the city has 4 forms of debt, one of which was a loan on this building here, $12.9 million. We had a $5 million loan for the Margarita Rec Center that's currently under construction. And then we have 2 unfunded liabilities, one related to employee pensions and the other related to what's called OPEB, or other post-employment benefits, also known as retiree health. That was a benefit that was afforded to employees way back before 2005, but there is still an outstanding unfunded liability on that. And then in December, with the adoption of this strategy, we were able to pay off the pension liability, $7.25 million towards that. We completely paid off the Civic Center loan and the MRC loan. And then the savings that's generated from the pay down of these debts are rolled into the next year's pay down strategy to continue to pay down. The next year we'll pay down the OPEB liability, and then we'll continue to pay down the pension liability. With the plan, all things being equal, we should be debt-free in 7 years. And that will actually add about $8.5 billion to the operating budget from the savings that's generated by paying down that debt. Just the pension alone, by paying that off in 7 years as opposed to the 30 years that it's currently amortized over, similar to a mortgage, will save over $30 million in interest by paying that down. This is another slide just showing the annual savings that's generated by the debt pay down strategy, and then where we are to date with the items that we've already paid down. We're already going to see next year an additional $3 million in operating savings that will then be used to continue to pay down the pension until it's fully paid off. Some budget highlights for the current fiscal year. General fund revenue is coming in a little over $111 million. What's notable on this slide is, looking at the chart, you have the black line on the chart that reflects revenues, and then the blue bars reflect expenditures. And it's important to note that the black line stays above the blue bar, indicating that we are structurally balanced. Revenues exceed expenditures each and every year. The gap does kind of lessen as you go out into the future. We have, if you look at the black bar between, or the black line, excuse me, between 22, 23, 23, 24, you see it flatten out. That's our way of reflecting a potential recession. We don't know if there'll be a recession, but we do hear enough commentary in the economy about things might be heading towards a recession. Depending on who you talk to on a given day, we hear both sides. So trying to be conservative in our projections, we are reflecting revenue flattening out. Expenditure-wise, this shows the general fund expenditures for the current year. Over half of the general fund is spent on public safety between police and fire. And it's important to note that the fire budget here of $11.2 million, that reflects only the portion that is charged to the city. The actual overall budget for fire is about $20 million, but there is a fire tax credit that homeowners pay into a tax credit through their property tax, and the county applies that $10 million first and then bills us the remaining $11 million. And then you can see we have about 20% of our budget goes towards public works, 9% towards community development, which is planning and building and safety, and then 14% towards administration. And then this slide is the fund balance. So what it shows here, a couple of important things. We are expecting to end the year with $37.1 million in fund balance. Of that, $18 million is set aside for a reserve for economic uncertainty. So that is in the event of a catastrophic natural disaster or collapse in the economy, we can draw upon those reserves to balance the budget. We have what's called a secondary reserve, and that's standing at about $4.6 million. Those two combined are about 25% of our operating budget. So those monies just sit in reserves. They're there, rainy day fund, you might call it. The city has never once had to tap into their reserves. We've been able to weather both the Great Recession and then most recently the COVID pandemic without having to utilize reserves. So that's pretty remarkable. The other thing on this chart, you see the blue bar in 21-22 of fund balance, and then it drops back down in 22-23. That decline is basically the payoff that we talked about a few slides ago of this building and then the MRC. And then we'll continue to pay that down, but never get as low as our reserve levels. So our reserve levels are shown in the black line, and then the policy level desired reserves is shown in the yellow dot. So each and every year in the 5-year forecast, we're meeting our reserve policy requirements, and then we have a little bit of a cushion over and above that. Our 5-year CIP is a pretty robust CIP for a city our size. We have 106 different projects. Total cost is about $801 million. About $518 million has yet to be spent. So that's really what our 5-year budget is for the CIP. We break those projects down into 4 categories. Circulation being the largest one, that's the road, mostly the road projects. And then you have infrastructure, Parks and Rec, and then SARTA, which is affordable housing. So some of the larger projects that are currently in the CIP for circulation, we have the French Valley Parkway Phase 2. That is to be started here in the next few months. That will greatly improve the congestion on I-15 heading north. We also have the Murrieta Creek Bridge at Overland, a little over $26 million, Nicholas Road extension improvements, the pavement rehab projects. Every year we dedicate anywhere from $7 to $8 million per year towards pavement rehab, and much of that goes into the neighborhoods to redo those roads and do fixes along the major arterials. And then we have another road project on the 15 to install an auxiliary lane going northbound from Temecula Parkway up to Rancho Cal. Infrastructure projects, the largest one going on right now is the Margarita Rec Center. It's currently under construction, scheduled to open probably in the fall. We have the CRC renovation that's going on, just under $11 million there. And the Santa Gertrudis Creek pedestrian bike trail extension, it's quite the mouthful. That project just came to completion, and we just had the ribbon cutting on that last fall, I believe. And then we have a fiber optic communication system upgrade on the books. The Parks and Rec projects, we have 20 different projects here. The CRC splash pad, shade structures, that'll be upcoming. Pickleball courts, that's an ongoing conversation. That budget may be revisited when we update the CIP once a final determination of a size of a pickleball complex is agreed upon. And then we have a placeholder for a future sports park on Murrieta Creek Regional Sports Park. We're trying to get some federal grant funding to help round out that budget there. And then we have some monies dedicated to redo the skate park and the hockey rink at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. And then finally, we have 3 housing projects on the books. Las Haciendas, that's currently under construction, a little over $10 million for that project. Then we have the Vine Creek Affordable Housing Project that'll be coming up here very soon. The city will be dedicated $6.7 million towards that project. And then we have an addition to the Habitat for Humanity housing units. That project will create 6 for-sale units as opposed to rental units. And that's in the pipeline as well. And then finally, we have our authorized positions. This is our head count over time. And you can see that we're standing at 196 full-time equivalent positions. We reevaluate this every year through the budget process and very strategically add positions where needs occur. It's important to note that in addition to the 196, we also have police and fire who we contract through with Riverside County to provide police and fire services. We have 71 fire personnel and then 136 police personnel through the contract. And then finally, we also have several part-time positions. They're called project employees, and these mostly support TCSD programs, aquatics, day camp, things of that nature. So, circling back to our discussion questions. Again, as a commissioner, do you feel that the city's investment in financial resources is in line with the community's priorities? If yes, maybe list some projects or programs you feel are most beneficial to our community, and if not, what are some suggestions you'd like for us to bring forward to the council as part of the proposed budget? And with that, I'm available for any questions or open it for discussion.
Great, let's go ahead, and if we can keep those 3 questions back up, please, and we'll address them one by one. So commissioners, as commissioner, do you feel the city investment of financial resources is in line with the community's priorities? Does anybody have any questions or comments in regards to that?
Okay, of course, I'm going off script. When you have a state that's looking at a $22 billion deficit, how does that impact our budget and doing some of the things that you want to do?
I didn't hear the first part.
If the state is looking at a $22.5 billion deficit this year instead of being in the black last year, how does
that impact us?
Yeah, does it?
Does
that affect SB1 dollars for pavement rehabilitation, or?
It doesn't necessarily affect us unless they do what would be called a state take. And the state is notorious for doing that when they have financial issues. They have in the past required cities and counties to make payments to help the state offset some of their deficits. We don't have an indication that that's coming our way, but if it is, we have resources to address that, and that is one of the uses of our secondary reserve or our emergency reserve in the event the state came in and did another state take. They have not done that for at least 10 years that I'm aware of, back when they dissolved redevelopment agencies. And then previous to that, there was another state take back in, I believe, like 07, 08 timeframe related to the Great Recession. But it's nothing on the horizon that I'm aware of regarding that, so. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Wilson?
Yes, I just wanted to state, I think the city is definitely on track as far as our safety. Our city is making that a priority. reducing our debt. We definitely want to continue to work out matters providing that. And also providing affordable housing. And I know right now in our city, with real estate and everything that's going on, higher interest rate, I think affordable housing is truly something that we need to continue to focus on, because we want people to come here because we do have jobs here, but we don't want them to be here if they can't afford it. So I think that is one of the main things that you guys are focusing on, and I think you're doing a great job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
First of all, I want to give appreciation where it should be given. You've done an amazing job since you've been here. I've been hearing the briefs during COVID and how the city stayed stable based on your leadership and what you do. So I want to make sure I give you all the respect and honor you deserve. And
Thank you.
and it's great. We're celebrating today. Women's History Month, and guess what? You're making it happen, and you're a great example. And your leadership should be emulated by anybody who's watching you. So. I think everything that you briefed out. I look at infrastructure, community resources such as the parks, and some of the updates to housing that you're doing. So the priorities are there. With me, again, just that focus needs to just continue to stay there. Continue to make sure our parks are where they need to be. Continue to make sure we have, again, like. Wilson, Commissioner Wilson, I keep wanting to call you chair, but Commissioner Wilson brought up in regards to the housing issue. I know that's been a long debate and conversation about what is truly affordable housing, and if we have the housing to, make sure people that are not making the money because of housing is expensive. And I know we're doing the things we need to do to look at that to make sure that we are making it equitable, and there's opportunity here to be able to stay in our communities and not have to commute from long periods of time to work here. So when I look at everything else, I think we're doing a great job. I think we're in alignment with our financial resources in regards to what the city's looking at. So not a lot right now to add to that, but just want to, again, say great job. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much for being here. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Electors?
Thank you. Yes, so my answer is yes, and I don't know. I think the budget priorities are clear, the investments are visible, and I can feel them. I double down and echo the community focus, the safety priority is huge. I come from the East Coast, so I know what it is to feel unsafe, and I haven't felt that here, so it's pretty palpable. I think the built environment in this community is amazing. I am quite tickled that I have to, when I'm playing with my grandkids, pick from a dozen parks to go to that we can walk to rather than just saying, let's go to the park. It's like, let's go to which park? So it's pretty amazing. I think where I don't know is those places that we're investing in root causes. So the affordable housing that Commissioners Wilson and Faulkner have shared, I echo that. That's something to be thinking about. I think there's also investments in supporting families, individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Typically, cities, communities invest in symptom mitigation rather than getting to root causes. So thinking about how we can build out the housing, make sure that we're investing in prevention of homelessness. And when we invest in those things, when we invest in affordable housing, living wage, employment, the payback comes in so many ways. It's preventing deeper traumas and harm these populations that are experiencing those things. So I just would encourage us to think about that think about how we're investing in those root causes. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Deutsch?
Yeah, for me, a lot of this was new, and this was terrific. I don't even think I have ever asked myself the question of how much is our city budget. So for me, this was super interesting. And I echo, the praise for the budget and for what we're doing and what it looks like the city and moving into the future. I want to ask you a question. The second question was interesting to me. Which programs or projects are most beneficial to our community? Can you just discuss that a little bit in terms of which programs and projects you think are most beneficial in light of an equity lens and through a REDI lens? I would just be curious what your answer is.
What my answer is? I mean, I know we do dedicate a lot of resources as we can to affordable housing. We have 3 projects, but we also do a lot of other outreach and education on that. You know, the new Quality of Life Master Plan was just adopted, and that has a REDI core value. So this will be our first budget cycle through where we identify things that equate back to that equity core value. So I think we'll see through this budget cycle the programs and projects that are linked back to the equity through this next budget cycle.
That's actually very helpful, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Perfect, thank you. And I agree too that we definitely follow in line with what our community wants. We want to be safe. We want to have beautiful parks. And the city really prioritized that for the entire community. I know last year when you presented in front of us, and I noticed there was a note to it based on last year's comments, where we were concerned through an equitable lens with the west side of the freeway. We want to make sure the people over there's a large amount of low-income housing over there. We want to make sure that the families that live there have all the same resources as everybody else. There is a park over there that it's maintained. They don't have access to a grocery store straight away. They don't have access to a school straight away, so those are definitely concerns. And not that we want you to fix all those tonight, but I think it's good to always keep those on the forefront. Also, the Boys and Girls Pujol Club is over there, and I know that they are consistently raising money to get that reopened. But I think that would be a huge game changer for that community to be able to have access to that daycare after school. And so I would love to see something where the city is in conversation, and they probably already are, but to continue those conversations and to work towards getting that open again for our community over there. Other than that, in regards to the housing, I believe on the agenda for the next city council meeting is a whole housing presentation. I think that's really, really important that our city as a whole understands what our city government does when it comes to housing. I think it's really, really important. It's incredibly expensive to live here, and we definitely empathize with people that can't afford to spend $800,000 on a house. There's a lot of people that can't afford to spend that amount of money. So if the city could continue to keep an eye on that there is that need and do everything that they can and continue to listen to the community. And I look forward to that presentation so that our community can understand that the city is making efforts and making strides in that direction. And it should definitely educate a lot of people in regards to what the city does and maybe start some other conversations in regards to what else we could possibly be doing. Does anybody else have any other questions or any other suggestions?
No other suggestions, but I do want to bring up the fact that, you know, I sat in the meeting when you awarded some of the nonprofits in the areas money to continue their work during the 2023, so I just applaud you for that. And how do we get that message out for more nonprofits to be able to be aware of the process and how to apply and make sure it's highly competitive with those that are doing this work in our community, and make sure that our residents are connected when there's an opportunity that there's a need to connect. So I applaud the city for doing it, and I'll see how we can do more of that and fund more of our nonprofits in the area as well. Thank you.
I also was thinking about our conversation with the equity lens on the Quality of Life Master Plan. And one of the things that I mentioned during that conversation was engaging the voice of lived experience. Who's receiving the services? The city does an amazing job in surveying the community and opening channels of communication and getting feedback. It takes another level of intention to get to the voice of lived experience, and sometimes we call it lived expertise. They can tell us what's going on with the housing issues, with the low income, the poverty-related issues, and really taking that to another level will get clear and better answers to these questions that you're posing to us. Thanks.
Go ahead.
So I always cover all the sexy topics. I wouldn't mind seeing a phase 2 on fire fuels mitigation. We just started. I told you this would be fascinating. We just started the first phase of fire fuels in the creek, and that has to be extended all the way through the valley. And so that's a long-term thing if you want to talk about safety.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Evanoff. Always the glamorous stuff, yes.
Someday I want a drainage culvert named after me.
We'll keep that in mind. She'll earmark that. All righty. Anybody else? Any other questions? Nope. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for
Thank you
doing
very
the
much.
rounds to all the commissions and giving us all the information that we need. So we appreciate that.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. You too. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next item of business, and I wanted to say thanks to everybody for being here. Budget is not always the most exciting thing, but you all sat through and it did really, really well. So we appreciate that, and hopefully you're enlightened a little bit and learned something about how our city operates and where the money goes. So that would be really good. I think all of us learn a little bit every single time, so that's really good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get started with our proclamation on Women's History Month. I'm thrilled that there's so many people here tonight to help us celebrate this. It is really important. There's a lot of women here. There's a lot of men supporting their women here, so we appreciate that. It is a very important month for all of us to really recognize that and to live in that moment. And our students that are here tonight, we appreciate you being here because it is important to know what the history is. And you're going to go on to make history in our community, and we want you to know that that will not be unseen. I did pull a quote from President Carter that I happened to come across, and I have an intense amount of respect for this man, so I thought it was really a good quote to have in light of Women's History Month. From the first settlers who came to our shores, from the first American Indian families who befriended them, men and women have worked together to build this nation. Too often, the women were unsung, and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed. But the achievements, leadership, courage, and strength, and love of the women who built America was as vital as that of the men whose names we all know so well. And that was from President Jimmy Carter's message, designating March 2nd to the 8th in 1980 for National Women's History Week. So, okay, we will go ahead and we will start our program. Director Joel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a staff video, and we're going to have Chris go ahead and load that up. I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk about the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote. So this is our staff video for this month. So with that, Chris, will you go ahead and play the video?
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. No, that's not the Declaration of Independence. It's actually from the Declaration of Sentiments, a document signed at the first ever Women's Rights Convention in 1848. Back then, women in the U.S. weren't allowed to do a lot of things men were, like vote, and it would take them another 70 years to be granted that fundamental right. Why? Well, many thought encouraging women's involvement in politics would undermine society. The prospect of women voting was threatening to the white men who held power. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott decided to organize factions across the country that were campaigning for suffrage, or the right to vote. The convention at Seneca Falls, New York, addressed women's rights and inspired other conventions and meetings. Stanton considered it the beginning of the women's rights movement. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was introduced, which would give black men, but not women of any color, the right to vote. Suffragists were split. Stanton and Susan B. Anthony opposed the amendment, objecting to the exclusion of women. They formed the National Woman Suffrage Association, hoping to pass a constitutional amendment that included women. Others, like abolitionists Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell, supported the 15th Amendment. They founded the American Woman Suffrage Association and lobbied for the women's right to vote on a state level instead of through a national amendment. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. Black men could vote, but women still couldn't. In 1878, a women's suffrage amendment penned by Susan B. Anthony was finally proposed in Congress, but it was defeated on the Senate floor in 1887. In 1890, the separate suffrage movements merged, opting to tackle suffrage by state in the wake of the federal amendment's defeat. Within 6 years, Colorado, Utah, and Idaho granted women the right to vote. Wyoming had already done it in 1869. Around the same time, the National Association of Colored Women was formed, bringing together more than 100 Black women's clubs. It included leaders Mary Church Terrell, Josephine Silent Yates, and Anna Julia Cooper. By the turn of the 20th century, the women's suffrage movement had gained renewed momentum. Parades, marches, and pickets drew great attention to the cause. Between 1910 and 1918, a number of states and territories expanded voting rights to women. In 1912, 15,000 suffrage supporters took to the streets of New York City. But as women's political power grew, so did the danger they faced. In 1913, on the eve of President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, hundreds of women were injured in a massive suffrage parade in the nation's capital. In November of 1917, 33 suffragists were arrested outside the White House. The women were clubbed, beaten, and tortured by prison guards at the Occoquan Workhouse. One of the movement's leaders, Alice Paul, founder of what became the National Woman's Party, was placed in solitary confinement in order to break her will and undermine her credibility. But press coverage of the women's treatment increased sympathy for their plight. And in 1918, Representative Jeanette Rankin, the first woman in Congress, opened congressional debate on a women's suffrage amendment. The resolution failed. In 1918, President Wilson also came out in favor of suffrage, declaring it was needed as a war measure. Wilson argued that women had been providing vital roles during World War I, and that their votes should be counted in order to make the world safe for democracy. Finally, in 1919, the Federal Women's Suffrage Amendment, the same one written by Susan B. Anthony back in 1878, was passed by the House and the Senate. And on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was officially incorporated into the U.S. Constitution, prohibiting denying the vote to a U.S. citizen based on gender, although states could still deny voting rights based on other things. It would take another 4 years for Native American women and men to get the right to vote, and more than 30 years before major restrictions were lifted on Asian American voting rights.
So as the city clerk of this city, I can't not do a video on women's right to vote. So we have plenty of young women here that are of age to register to vote, pre-register to vote. So our message to them is absolutely please make sure that you vote. And with that, Madam Chair, we can move on to the next part of our program, which we are very lucky to have Supervisor Chuck Washington with us today. So Supervisor Chuck Washington, would you like to go ahead and come on up? And we also have, after Supervisor Chuck Washington, Mayor Schwenk is here to give a few words as well. Welcome, Supervisor.
Well, good evening. What an honor and a joy. This is kind of like a homecoming for me. All the years I spent, even in this particular chamber. And so, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and to our Mayor and our City Clerk and City Manager, all the city staff. It's an honor to be here. I'm Chuck Washington. I'm the Riverside County Supervisor for the 3rd District. I've been in that position for 8 years now. The district is changing, just for your information. I no longer have Hemet and San Jacinto, and as of January 1st, Menifee joined us. So now we have Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, and at the end of next year, we'll pick up Wildemar. I continue to have areas to the east, unincorporated areas, East Hemet, Val Vista, Sage, Awanga, it's Awanga, not Agwanga, and Anza, and it's almost 500,000 residents. I share this with you to give you some context about what I'm going to tell you about the good work going on at the county. And I loved the presentation about the budget because I'm very proud that for the last 2 years, we've been operating in a balanced budget in our $7.5 billion budget that is overseen and implemented by 23,000 employees. As you can imagine, it would be very difficult for me to cover a region with 500,000 residents as my constituents without a little bit of assistance, right? So I have a personal staff, a staff of 8. And that's kind of where my story begins here tonight, because not only are we celebrating Women's History Month, but I think what we need to acknowledge is that oftentimes we're looking back, and we're not looking in the present and in the future to see what history is being made right now, right in front of us. And that is occurring. Yesterday, we celebrated International Women's Day, a celebration that recognizes the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women all around the globe. And that's significant. And when you think about the percentage of the population that women make up, how could we have ever thought it made sense to cut half of our population out of contributing? Well, does that mean women have not been contributing? I'm going to use my own wife as an example. She's in her late 60s, and that's all I'll tell you about her age. A long time ago, in our early years of marriage, we'd planned to be retired at this point in our lives. Actually, we would have been retired some time ago. She's never been busier. I've never been busier. She has 2 jobs, and she co-parents our 3 grandchildren 2 to 3 days a week. So she's a very busy lady. She never asked for recognition. And whenever I ask her to accompany me at a county event, she's always there by my side. And so I'm here to recognize the many women who make contributions that goes unrecognized. But quite honestly, I would not be here today. I would not be the man I am without this wonderful woman who is by my side. So I give her acknowledgement, as well as all of the women who are making contributions day in and day out that has gone unrecognized. I want to also focus on women in the workforce. We know that through studies that women in the workforce make work better. They improve working conditions. They improve the overall efficiency of the workplace. Women are a benefit to the workplace. I am setting history, and not the kind of history that you may think of because of the color of my skin, but at Riverside County now, for the second time in 5 years, of my staff of 8, they're all women. So it wasn't something that I said, doggone it, I'm going to only have women work for me. It was where I ended up when I had vacancies to fill, and I opened up the opportunity to whoever was qualified and capable. And guess what? It ended up being all women who were applying. Young women, young millennials, young Gen Zers, well-educated, smart, hardworking, great public servants. And they're serving you as a part of the county staff that represents me out in the community and helps me get this job done. I also want to mention that this great team of 8 women is led by a young woman who came to work for my predecessor 9 years ago as an intern. She finished college, got her bachelor's degree. She went back to school, got her master's degree. And a couple months ago, I named her my chief of staff. She's 28 years old. She is literally the smartest woman I've ever met. And my wife agrees with me, so there's no slight there. My wife's pretty smart. Here's the really cool thing. We can't verify this because the county doesn't keep records, but as far as we can tell, she's the first African-American chief of staff ever at Riverside County. I think that's pretty cool. So when you give women an opportunity, they make history. We saw the video, women making history, women creating an efficient, effective workplace environment and getting stuff done, right? On behalf of people in government, on behalf of our many constituents. So it's a great honor to be here and be asked to be here to recognize Women's History Month, but not only to talk about women that have come before, but the women that are sitting here today, tonight, the women, young women in the back who are here from the high schools, who are our future leaders, they're going to make this city, this county, this state, and this country, and this world a better place to live. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, next we have our mayor. Mayor Schwenk is here with us.
Good evening, everyone. All right. Okay, good evening, Chair Steed, commissioners, staff, students, and community members. I am Zach Schwenk, mayor of this great city of Temecula, and it's an honor to be here tonight as we share in the celebration of Women's History Month. I would certainly like to thank Supervisor Washington for his thoughtful words and his presence here this evening. We appreciate you and the time you take to be with the community on this occasion. I stand before you all tonight as your mayor, and I am here to honor, celebrate, and acknowledge the accomplishments and contributions women make to our communities and to our country. I know we will see a historical perspective in some of the comments and presentations tonight, but I'd like to take a moment and focus on the powerful women here tonight. The women in this room that contribute in countless ways to our city every single day. Whether you sit on this dais or in the audience, whether you're a professional public employee or a tireless appointed advocate, I'm extremely proud of the work that you do. Whether you're a teacher or a student, a business owner or an employee, you all make our city whole. Your perspectives are important and required for us to genuinely thrive. To the men here this evening, thank you for being here. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that the spaces we occupy are safe and empowering for all women. I'm not asking for anyone to give up their seat at the table, just make some room. Make space physically, but also open up your mind to a different perspective, a woman's perspective. To the students here as well, women are outnumbering men in many educational settings, from undergraduate work to law school, yet opportunities are still harder for you to acquire than they are for men. There is intersectionality to the discrimination you face. There are many factors influencing your daily life and the path, but nevertheless, you persist. It is my hope that nights like this will help promote equity and inclusion and bring about an awareness to the struggles that women continue to face in our society. And my hope is that all of us, myself included, serve as an ally to help remove old barriers that no longer belong in our society and our culture, and sometimes it means simply getting out of the way. By standing idly by and allowing vicious cycles to continue and hold back or hold down girls and women, it's complicity in my book. So I ask everyone here tonight to take as an opportunity to remind ourselves the value of all people in our community, to continue to lift those up that need our strength, to take a chance on those that deserve an opportunity, and to step aside for those ready to reach their full potential. To me, that's being an active member of our community far and wide, open and inclusive. To me, that is freedom and liberty for all. Love them, cheer them, protect them, defend them, celebrate them. Thank you all for allowing me to speak this evening and celebrate Women's History Month with you all. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have 4 proclamations before you. They all read the same. So if you would like to go ahead and read one of them, and then we're going to go ahead and invite our student recipients to come up and go ahead and give their presentations. So we'll have you read the proclamation first.
Sounds good. Yes, we have actually 4 groups, and 2 of the groups are going to be represented here tonight. Women in Leadership, Chaparral High School, they are unable to attend tonight, but we do have a proclamation for them. NOW Now from Great Oak High School, they are here tonight to receive their proclamation. The Femineers from Great Oak High School are not here tonight, but we do have a proclamation for them. And the Women's Empowerment Club from Temecula Valley High School are here tonight, and we will be giving them a proclamation. As I read the proclamation, I did read it in advance, and it is worded really, really well, and I hope that the young students that get to receive this take the time to read it and understand the thoughts that went into it. So the City of Temecula Proclamation. Whereas National Women's History Month celebrates the legacy of trailblazing women and girls who have built, shaped, and improved upon our city, state, and nation. And whereas women of every age, race, religion, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of Temecula in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas whether serving in elected positions, leading groundbreaking civil rights movements, venturing into unknown frontiers, or programming revolutionary technologies, generations of women share new ideas and open new doors, having a profound and positive impact on our community. And whereas women who have been leaders, not only in securing their rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist, emancipation, industrial labor, civil rights, and peace movements, which have created a more fair and just society for all. And whereas, despite their contributions, the role of women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in literature, leadership, teaching, and the study of American history. And whereas women play a critical economical, cultural, and social role in every sphere of life in Temecula. And now, therefore, I, on behalf of Mayor Zach Schwank, and on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim this month of March 2023 to be National Women's History Month, and call upon our community to learn more about the history of women and to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities.
And with that, we'll go ahead and call up the students of now with Great Oak High School. Woo-hoo! And Mrs. Arbin, don't go too far. We know you're the advisor, so please feel free to come on up as well. And that sounds great. And then we'll go ahead and, did you want to do the presentation of the proclamation right now and then have them do their? Okay. So they're going to go ahead and give you the proclamation, and then there's a couple of pictures, and then you can go ahead and do your presentation.
And we're going to go ahead and give the next proclamation, and then we'll have you guys come back up and do your presentation.
And the next one is the Women's Empowerment Club of Temecula Valley High School.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Welcome, student members of NOW.
Hi. So we're from NOW Club at Great Oak, and that's the National Organization for Women, which we are affiliated with. And we're just going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I'm Madeline Cordaro. I'm a senior at Great Oak, and I'm one of the co-presidents of NOW Club. I'm also the founder of and president of environmental activism, and I'm involved in many more clubs at our school. I'm passionate about women's rights because I believe that women deserve equal rights to men, and that raising awareness and education about women's rights and issues is essential to create societal change and eliminate discrimination.
Hi, I'm Luciana Venn, and I'm also a senior at Great Oak and the vice president of NOW Club. I am also the vice president of NHSDA, which is the National Honor Society for the Dance Arts, and involved in other clubs such as Fashion Club and Senior Care Club. I'm passionate about women's rights because I believe supporting women's rights makes the world a better place and helps to create more peace and kindness through sustaining a diverse society that allows for everyone's voice to be heard.
And today we just wanted to discuss women that inspire us. So first of all, I'm going to talk about Maya Angelou. She's thought of as a pioneer in the feminist discussion on topics like racism and sexual abuse. She was a part of the civil rights movement and was mute for 6 years after undergoing trauma at the hand of her mother's boyfriend, then went on to become one of the most famous activist poets of all time. She inspires me because although she faced endless adversity in many forms, she used those experiences to create art in the form of poetry and share her voice. A couple of my favorite quotes by her: "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you, and still all rise," from one of her more famous poems. I'd also like to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a Supreme Court justice known for fighting against gender discrimination. She attended Cornell University, and after having a child, enrolled in Harvard Law School, where she was one of only 9 females in her 500-student class. Because of her gender, she struggled to find a job in the legal field, but she eventually became the first female law professor to hold tenure at Columbia University, as well as holding other highly respectable positions. She headed the Women's Rights Project of the American Civil Liberties Union, and inspires me because she's an example of a woman who defied stereotypes and was determined to reach her goals and fight for other women even when others tried to stop her. My favorite quote from her is, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made."
The first woman I'd like to speak about is Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama is most known for serving as the First Lady of the United States from 2009 to 2017. She was also the first African American to serve in this position. Michelle has worked as an advocate for poverty, education, nutrition, physical activity, and healthy eating. She inspires me mainly because she works as an inspiration for people to change their world for the better every day. And some quotes I love from her are, "The future of our world is only as bright as the future of our girls. When they go low, we go high. Success is only meaningful and enjoyable if it feels like your own." The next woman I'd like to speak about is Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells is best known for being an investigative journalist and being one of the founders of NAACP. Wells was one of the first people to ever report lynching. She used her coverage of the cases to raise awareness and lead an anti-lynching campaign through writing and lecturing nationwide. Although many people did not support her, she kept fighting and educating others about what she thought was right. Later on, she continued to fight segregation and for women's suffrage. One reason why Ida B. Wells inspires me is that she kept fighting for what she thought was right, and how we shouldn't let others' discouragement interfere with our goals. Some quotes that I love from her are, "The appetite grows from what it feeds on, and the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them."
So these are only a few of the many inspirational women that you can find, and we hope that you all are as inspired as these women as we were. This is our contact information. We do have an Instagram as well as our personal emails if you have questions about the club or any other questions, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And next we have the Women's Empowerment Club from Temecula Valley High School.
Okay, hi, my name is Brianna Singh. I'm the president and founder of the Women's Empowerment Club that we actually just started this year. We sent in a video, but first I just wanted to say thank you so much for including us in this, and thank you for reaching out to clubs and including students. This club means so much to me, and I've learned so much just because I created it, and this means a lot. So,
My name is Aspen Kim, and I'm the vice president of this club.
okay, you can play the video.
Hi, my name is Brianna Singh, and I'm the president and founder of the Women's Empowerment Club.
And my name is Aspen Kim, and I'm the vice president and co-founder.
So I started this club this year, so it's a relatively new club, and I started it with the goal of creating a safe space for women of all races and sexualities on our campus. I also wanted to create a place for us to share our experiences and bond over them.
One of the events we hosted this year was Women's Healing Circle, where we made little scrapbooks and shared our experiences as women through the art. Even though we just started this club, I'm happy to see that it's already grown to over 30 members.
And we also interviewed some of our club members about their own experiences in the club and why they joined. So the first question is, why did you decide to join Women's Empowerment?
I joined Women's Empowerment to find a sense of community and find people I can relate to, and also learn about women's history and important events.
I wanted to find a sense of community and a group that I could feel safe with
I joined this club because I wanted to have a space where people can talk openly and also learn about women's history and important people.
What's your favorite thing we've talked about or done in the club this year?
One of my favorite things we did in the club was zine making, and it's a nice creative outlet, and you can also have a way to express yourself.
I think my favorite thing that we did was talking about internalized misogyny, like how often women are treated worse than men, even if you don't realize it in everyday life.
One of my favorite things that we did in the club this year was venting, and we all get to share our personal experiences and relate to each other.
My favorite thing we learned about so far is how lots of women in Asian countries are pressured to marry, especially during Lunar New Year.
So as we mentioned earlier, these are some pictures from our first healing circle we hosted back in December, and this is a picture of us and our amazing advisor. These are a few of the zines that we made. And in club meetings, we do watch some videos sometimes, so I'm going to include some clips of them and what we talked about. So during the meeting where we watched this video, we talked about the term leftover woman and how it's been used in Asian countries to describe women who haven't married, because in Asian cultures, a lot of women feel the pressure to get married. And this typically happens because of the emphasis on honoring your family, which Asian cultures really appreciate. We also watched this campaign video by the UK Women's Aid. It's titled He's Coming Home and was released during the World Cup season to raise awareness about the rise in domestic abuse rates when the UK plays in the World Cup, and especially when they lose. An interesting film, actually one of the first films we watched, was this film about how Haudenosaunee Indigenous women influenced the first suffragists of the women's rights movement. They were and still are a matrilineal society, which means that everything is passed down through the woman. And finally, these are some pictures from our school's Day of Solidarity, where clubs collaborated and set up booths, and ours made scenes.
Happy Women's History Month!
Thank you. Okay. My vice president has one more thing to say.
Lastly, we'd like to thank our amazing club advisor, Mrs. Mayar. She constantly goes above and beyond to support us in our club, and she even offers her own resources and open the doors to amazing opportunities such as this one. So thank you, Mrs. Mayar.
Madam Chair, next we have our assigned commissioner comments, so we'll turn it over to Commissioner Eventhoff.
All right, well, thank you. Hi, my name is Adam Eventhoff, and first slide, please. All right, second slide, please. We're supposed to, when we do these presentations, speak about ourselves, and to be honest, this is all about Women's History Month, so the only thing I really want to cover is really the fact that I'm most proud of being a member of this panel right here, this commission, as well as being a husband of 30 years and a father to my son Ian, a bear, and my daughter Maddie, who's a puma. And so, next slide, please. Anyway, so by the numbers, and you guys can read this for yourselves, but 168, this is just American, and all of these slides are really about American history, women's history. And from what I hear, there's a rumor that there are women in other countries and they have their own histories too. So we're not going to be covering those, I apologize, but trying to cover all of American women's history in 5 minutes is going to be tricky as is. So please look at these numbers, 79.1 million number of females ages 16 and older who participated in the civilian labor force in 2021, or 1.9 trillion women-owned businesses that have an impact on our economy. This is a reminder that there's an economic and a social impact that is beyond measure that we sometimes forget about, that when we look at history shot through a male-centric lens, we forget that, or we overlook some of these incredible contributions. For example, later this month, we're going to be celebrating Cesar Chavez. However, Dolores Huerta was right there with him the entire time, and she was there. Sometimes she gets overlooked, the fact that she was right there helping to create the National Farm Workers Association, helped organize the historic Delano grape strike of 1965. So Women's History Month serves as a reminder not only for the great accomplishments of the past, but of the lasting changes that have created opportunities for women that were really thought impossible only 50 years ago. And I happen to know Robin, who is the chief of staff for Supervisor Washington, and Supervisor Washington is right. She's probably one of the smartest women I've ever met. So, slide 3, please. So, in covering basically 300 years of American women's history in 5 minutes or less, it starts well before John Adams and Abigail Adams, and talking about how women have to be included in this revolution and in this new experiment called America, or the first Women's Rights Convention almost 70 years later, or for that matter, a slave, Sojourner Truth, who rose to become an abolitionist and a leader in the women's rights effort. And in her speech, Ain't I a Woman, which I'll allude to a little bit later, there's also accomplishments throughout our history, whether it's folks who have tried to pass suffrage even before the state was a state, or Jeanette Rankin of Montana, who was sworn to be the first woman elected to Congress. But there's so many others. One of the things that's missing in this slide, for example, is that we have Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African American woman to become a member of Congress, and later she rose to run for the Democratic Party. Next slide, please. So many other accomplishments. We have, you talk about Amelia Earhart, or you talk about Rosa Parks, but we also have, we also go back to some of the other movements that were there. How can you overlook the fact that you have Elizabeth Cady Stanton, which video got it, Susan B. Anthony, Sanger, and the efforts of birth control, and the feminine mystique, and Betty Friedan in the 60s, or the landmark ruling of Roe v. Wade, or some of the other efforts that were landmark things that, unfortunately, the slide deck doesn't quite cover, but we do have to remember. One of the things that was instrumental that we celebrate in the 50th anniversary, really, was that of Title IX. Now, I'm a USC guy, and it kills me to admit that Ann Meyer actually was the first woman to earn a scholarship, but she actually went to UCLA. But we'll get over it, because Barbara Hallquist, just a few months later, signed a 4-year scholarship at USC. But anyway, so there are too many moments in women's history to really adequately do this. But one of the things that I do want to cover, and is that going back to that first slide, going back to that slide talking about women by the numbers, there's one thing that really still remains. This is almost 60 years after Kennedy signed a declaration about trying to do equal pay, is that women still earn about 82 cents on the dollar. For every dollar a man makes, women make about 82 cents. Now that number has come up a little bit, but over the last 20 years, it's been pretty flat. There's a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of explanations, and none of them are acceptable. So I'll get off my soapbox. Anyway, I do want to say that even though we talk about the past, even though we talk about all these landmark folks, they are just, in fact, the first. And what's most important is they're not the last. And so for every Sally Ride that we celebrate, there are 50 other astronauts that came in her wake that we celebrate. And for every chairwoman here, there's another chairwoman and another chairwoman in the making that's happening. And so thank you for allowing me to give my spiel. It took a little longer than 5 minutes. And I don't think I covered very much, there's only 200-300 years of history, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Evanthof. And lastly, before we have a couple of public comments, we have our Community Services Superintendent Bea Barnett with us, and she's going to quickly go over everything else that the city is doing for Women's History Month this year.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, REDI Commissioners, colleagues, and community. It's an honor to recap and preview some of the Temecula Community Services highlights. You can see we welcomed music royalty on Temecula stage as we presented the American Black History Month presentations, and we want to thank Vice Chair for attending and supporting the theater. We had the String Queens here, and they entertained 260 residents on a rainy Saturday night. At the conclusion of the performance, over 100 patrons were treated to a special meet and greet, and they were very thankful to have this type of programming. Next slide, please. As our nation celebrates Women's History Month annually in March, we're celebrating the contributions of several women from Temecula's past and present. So I encourage you to visit our Instagram page at Temecula Parks and Rec. We are highlighting inspirational and influential women weekly, beginning with the pioneering women who formed Temecula's valley's deep roots, followed by honorable city founders that's posted this week, concluding with the admirable women of Temecula today. Remember to check back each week as we reflect and remember our city's her story. Next slide, please. I just want to let you know that Art Off the Walls is now being officially rebranded to Art Nights. It's still the first Friday of every month, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Merc in the Lot on Main. It's free. It's a monthly event that showcases art, live music, refreshments. Any students out there that are artists, you can sign up and sell your wares. It's all completely free. We've been doing that for several years, since 2014. We're also grateful to have had many of our commissioners and staff at the unveiling last night of the Cesar Chavez mural. It was put on by the Great Oak High School students. They presented that to us last night. It's going to be up through the months of April and May. And then finally, we had next slide, please. We had the St. Patty's Day lunch at the Senior Center today. It was a lot of fun. The choir got to sing. And then I want you to get out your calendars and mark all of these second Saturdays on your calendar. We're celebrating Israel on Saturday. The rest of the year, different country will be highlighted every month at the Temecula Valley Museum and Sam Hicks Monument Park. And then finally, Special Games is coming to Great Oak High School. It's March 18th. It's designed for athletes of all ages with developmental disabilities to participate in non-competitive games with award ceremonies. The athletes are paired up with volunteers. If you'd like to sign up, you get community service hours. And pre-registration is required for this free event. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
And with that, we're to public comments.
We have 3 public comments, and since it's a business item, they'll each have 5 minutes. Our first speaker is Gary Audie, to be followed by Jillian Larson.
BTV is excited to be back again to the commission. Happy Women's History Month, commissioners, chair, vice chair, and staff, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on business item 3. BTV is here tonight to invite you to join us as we celebrate women's cycling. Here's a little bit of history that maybe you didn't learn in school. Some of the names might sound familiar from tonight's very special women in history, but here's some facts that I have for you tonight. In one of the most important periods of women's rights, the late 19th century, the bicycle played a role. Coming out of the Victorian age, when women were expected to stay home, and in the late 1800s with the invention of the safe bicycle, everyone was presented with a great freedom to move, as well as the women of this historical period. Even Annie Oakley, the American sharpshooter, was a big fan of the bicycle. A little known fact that her performances in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, She didn't just shoot while riding horseback. She also taught herself to ride a bike without using the handlebars so that she could make her shots. It's not surprising that many members of the women's suffrage movement were also bicycle riders. Bicycles gave the suffragettes independence of movement without chaperones. Women became more aware of the public climate and could meet each other freely to socialize as well as to organize. Here's a quote from Susan B. Anthony. "Let me tell you what I think about bicycling. I think it has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. It gives women a feeling of freedom and self-reliance. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride on a wheel." That's a bicycle. And our history lesson ends with this quote from Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the philosopher of the period's women's rights movement. "The bicycle will inspire women with more courage, self-respect, and self-reliance, and make the next generation more vigorous of mind and of body." So the importance of knowing history is evident. We must continue to advocate for that feeling of freedom in transportation and recreation, and to make our infrastructure safe and accessible to all. We hope through BTV's advocacy, we can encourage more of us to take up this mode of transportation and recreation, and in the process, give all groups, women included, an opportunity to feel safe when accessing walkways, bikeways, and trails. Tonight, we invite you and anybody here in the audience to BTV's Celebrate Women Ride on Saturday, March 25th at 10 a.m. at Joseph Park, and we will be rolling along the Santa Gertrudis, Murrieta Creek, and Old Town Creek Walk trails. On this ride, we will also be celebrating some of Temecula's best active transportation achievements as we ride under the I-15 freeway on the Santa Gertrudis undercrossing and traverse the entirety of Old Town without interacting with a car or truck. As we celebrate women's history and as we continue to develop our infrastructure, trails, and roads, implementing our quality of life master plan, we ask REDI again to continue to take into account these two questions. Is active transportation accessible to all of our diverse populations? And number two, are we providing safe mobility for all residents and visitors? And I just wanted a lot of the talk tonight about housing, affordable housing, can connect very much with active transportation and affordability of transportation. So we continue to want to work with you on that too. By the way, if you need a bike, we can get a bike for you that day. On behalf of BTV, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to celebrate Women's History Month with you and the city. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Jillian Larson, to be followed by our last speaker, Kimberly Smith Austin.
Good evening, Chair Steed, not council members, sorry, commissioners, city staff, and all of our students and youth here tonight, but also listening at home. And it's not just about young or old women, it's all women. I'm here to celebrate my daughters, my granddaughters, my friends, and everybody I've known, and I will read the rest. A quote from Oprah is my opening comment this evening as I celebrate, along with all of those I've just mentioned, Women's History Month. Know what sparks the light in you, so you, in your way, can illuminate the world. When I look at all of you, our youth, I know our future is in safe hands, as you are the young women leaders of our community, all of you who are part of Women in Leadership, now Femineers, Women's Empowerment Club, clearly have sparked a light in each of your hearts, and I congratulate and applaud you. You have started a journey that will last a lifetime. Women of all ages in history have made a difference, and we've heard a lot of that this evening, so thank you, and have led the way in so many ways, illuminating the way for all of us to follow. You all walk in the footsteps of so many just like you, and to name a few who have illuminated our present and future and left their mark. They did something despite their age or circumstances, a little at a time every day, that started with that spark, and it walked them into our history, not even knowing the mark that they would lead. Age and circumstances have not been a deterrent to many, and it should not be to all celebrating women's history. Ruby Bridges, at 6, walked into the first integrated school. Malala, at 15, pushed for education for girls in Pakistan. Anne Frank, at 13, wrote all about her daily 2-year life in hiding. Alex Scott opened a lemonade stand when she was 4 after being diagnosed with cancer. That led to other kids doing the same, and over $1 million was raised, and there is now a foundation, Alex's Lemonade Stand, to carry on her legacy. Greta Thunberg, aged 8, using Asperger's as her superpower, as she calls it, started her work towards climate change. Frank Epperson invented the popsicle at age 11 by pure accident. Louis Braille invented Braille at the age of 12 because he was blind. Many women over 60 have also made their mark in so many areas. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was 65 when her work in the late 1800s led to the women's vote in 1920, and we saw that this evening. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was 60 when she was the second woman appointed to the U.S. Justice of Supreme Court. Annie Leibovitz, world-famous photographer of famous people. Joan Rivers, first woman late-night TV host. Grandma Moses started painting at 78, and on and on and on. So many women have laid the stepping stones that you are already on, and that leads to your future and your place in history. Whatever path you follow, just know that you will make a difference, big or small, to the world, to your family, but mostly to yourself. Continue to feed that spark, dig deep, and follow your own path, and make your own history. The greatest mistake a person makes is he who does nothing because he can only do a little. Edmund Burke. Thank you all, and go for it.
Our final speaker is Kimberly Smith Austin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to just say to this amazing council, what a pleasure, and to everyone here in the audience this evening. I am Kimberly Smith Austin, and I will tell you, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion facilitator and instructor, but also an advocate for women, I came here thinking, what in the world am I going to talk about today? But today you've heard so many already share the history, the stories. So my brain said, what could I share? First, I thought about wearing my Superwoman shirt to just let you know that women, as you all know, are superwomen. But I came with an acrostic. How many of you like acrostics, alliterations, mnemonics, things that help you remember? So I have one today. It's called The Woman, or better yet, Women. So I'm going to start with the W, and I'm going to start with warrior. You all have heard the stories. Women stand before us as warriors. They've shown us how to live, how to exist, and how to transform this world. And I'll tell you, as a woman myself, I feel honored and privileged to walk in these shoes. But I also know that as a woman, we're wanderers. We're wanderers. We look around and think about what are the possibilities? What if? What if I only? And that is what has led us to the discoveries, the creations, and the things that we've been able to do over the years. So think about the woman with that W. What about the O? We saw so many women who decided, you know what? I'm going to stand before the people and be the only. The only. And I think it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery to say, I'm the only one. In my race, in my age, in my community. I'm going to stand amongst and be different. And I love that. But also, women tend to be extremely optimistic, which is what has led us to many discoveries. We know that there's possibility upon possibility upon possibility that sit before us. And because of that, we're willing to take the chance. The M for women, how many of you would agree? Mission-oriented. There's something that says when a woman gets her mind made up, there's nothing or no one that can stop her. And that's what I love. I know as a woman myself, get out of the way. Get out of the way, because mission-minded, mission-oriented has led so many of the women we've heard about today make a difference in our society, not just for women of season and maturity, but for the young women who stand behind us. I love it, and it brings me great joy to be one of those women. How about this? Society has often classified women as emotional. You know it. They call us, oh, women are from Mars, and men are, what is that expression? Men are Mars, women are Venus, or women, we're waffles, and men, no, I'm all mixing it up. Men are, let's stop there. We're emotional, period. I couldn't figure it out. My brain didn't work. But let me remind you this. We are emotional for a reason. But think about the emotional intelligence that comes with that. And as a result of our emotional intelligence, we've been able to weave, to move, to make things happen as a result of using that God-given quality that was given to us. And that's another special quality. But what about the fact that women never, ever, ever give up? They never give up. They're willing to stand before audiences like you. They're willing to stand before the government. They're willing to stand before the city and whomever it takes to make sure that their purpose stands forward. They're willing to make a cause for their children, for their community, and for the world around them. So when you think about women, remember, they're warriors. They're optimistic. They're mission-minded. They're emotional, but emotionally intelligent. But most of all, never, ever give up. I want you to say with me, if you're a woman, I am woman, hear me roar. You ready? 1, 2, 3. I am woman, hear me roar. Thank you.
Okay, now everybody's really awake, right? Thank you for that. That was wonderful. Okay, we're going to go ahead, and this is the portion of the evening where we do commissioners' comments. So we're going to start at this side. Commissioner Deutsch, do you have any comments for us this evening? Comments being in regards to our program, in regards to any happenings you had in the REDI lens in the last couple of weeks?
You can tell I'm new, and I love being in the hot seat. This was an amazing program, and thank you so much to the students and their advisors who came out to accept the proclamation and be here, and the things that you're doing on your campuses and in your lives. I know many of you are gearing up to graduate, and I hope you'll stay in touch with us and let us know where you are and what you're doing next, because there is greatness in this room, and I'm very, very proud. A couple of things that I've done this past month, tapping into women's history. I am a member of the Historical Society for Temecula, and I wrote an article that's on the front page, if you want to take a look, about how our city is framed by 2 streets named after a woman. So I'll let you take a look at that, but it's pretty amazing that Old Town itself is framed in a historical context by a woman. And the other thing I did, which I thought was amazing, and I don't know if you all carry this around like I do, the city guide to the community services. I carry it everywhere. But I went to the Tattooed and Tenacious exhibit at the Temecula Valley Museum. It's a small exhibit about women with tattoos and kind of a history of tattooing. And they had a speaker that was amazing who talked about the early days for her as a tattoo artist and what that was like for her being in an industry that was predominantly men, and how things have changed for her and how just tattooing has changed in general. It was super cool. I was so glad I went. I will be going to some of the museum events, to the Culture Day coming up. I'm looking forward to that. And in terms of just women and history, if you haven't tapped in to see what's going on with the Ramona pageant coming up, I hope that you will all take a look at that, because I haven't been before since I'm newer to the area, and I cannot wait. So there's a lot of women's history stuff going on. And again, I am so proud of the women in this room that you came out tonight, and the women that you are in touch with, and the things that we are all doing to not just have a voice in Temecula, but a voice in the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner electors.
Thank you, Chair Steed. What a powerful, powerful evening. All of the comments, all of the presentations, I'm sitting here reminded of the sheroes in my life who have sown into me, who have invested in me. First and foremost, my bride, Stevie Wonderful, who for some reason has managed to allow me to be married to her for 29 years. To the women who have mentored me, who have corrected me, who have encouraged me. Even my 4-year-old granddaughter, as we're driving on the 15, she'll be like, "Poppy, take a deep breath." Or Poppy, that's a language word. But the women have always been on the forefront, in the front lines, in progress in this nation, and the fight for justice. The fight for justice is particularly important to me. And so I am just feeling so moved by how I'm connecting this with those women who have invested in my life and been so powerful in helping me be who I am. And so I'm so encouraged by the students who shared with us tonight. You all are amazing. You all are the next generation, which gives me incredible hope. We've made progress, but we haven't arrived. So there's work for all of us to continue to do, and there's going to be work for you to do. So please stay in it. Please stay encouraged. And thank you for being who you are. Thanks.
Commissioner Evanoff.
All right. Well, we heard from the budget director, and so please reach out to all of us. And if you have some priorities, some suggestions, some thoughts, by all means, share that with us. Now, I did want to mention something. We all take turns doing presentations, and it was my turn to do Women's History Month. And the potential for a white, middle-aged, paunchy guy to do mansplaining in front of a room full of people was enormous. So I got very nervous. But I did want to end the evening with a quote, which was from Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman, which is, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the whole world upside down all alone, women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And for that, I'll just be quiet.
Love it. Okay, Commissioner Wilson.
Commissioner, you did a great job. Thank you so much for that. To all of the young ladies that presented, I am truly blown away. And you guys are the foundation of leaders for the future. So I just wanted to read this to you. It says, "A woman is the full circle. Within her is the power to create, to nurture, and to transform. And that is what you women are becoming." So I applaud you. Keep up the good work. And for your advisors, thank you so much for having the faith in them and to stand behind them. So just want to applaud you for that. And so far this month already, we've had our Rock Your Red event. And this event is put on by our community. And it's to educate men and women on heart and stroke disease. And this is something in the city of Temecula that we did. We had over 175 women and men at this event. So we were really, really glad to host that. And then I had the pleasure of listening to Ms. Camilla Moore. She did a diversity talk on reparation. And I think the more we know, the more educated we are, and the more we can be more empathetic toward other people. So I was really impressed by that presentation. And as a result of that, we are reading the book, The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. And this is a wonderful, wonderful book. I'm on chapter 4 already, and I'm emotionally involved in this book. So if you're looking for a good book that you want to be able to have some conversation with people that we just don't know, and I think that's what I love about this book, is because the more we educate ourselves, the more that we can find ourselves putting ourselves in other people's shoes and seeing what situations they deal with on a daily basis. So the book is called The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. And then I had the pleasure of going to the city managers meeting to find out everything that's going on in Menifee, Lake Elsinore, Wildemar. But I must say our Mr. Adam did the best presentation because our city rocks all of them. So I just have to send that plug out. And then lastly, Miss Kimberly Austin just spoke. She is truly a trailblazer, and she's holding an event next Saturday, March the 18th, and it's called Empowered Women in Wellness. And she has about 20, if you can see the energy that she has about 20 speakers that will be speaking on that day. And this is for us women to be empowered. So come out. It's going to be at the Rock Church in Temecula, and it's next Saturday, and I think it starts about 9 o'clock. And yours truly will be speaking also. So come out and support, and thank you guys for being here. That's it.
Well, thank you. This is very engaging and very empowering tonight to come here to celebrate Women's History Month. I'm a fatherless young man, so I'm the product of a woman who held it together doing both. So I want to pay homage to her. May she rest in heaven, but know that her son is keeping pressing because of the things she instilled in me to understand the power of women in this country and around the world. You are 50.5% of the population in the United States of America. That is power, all right? So use that power to ensure that you're never, ever not in the room, not in the discussion, and not in decision-making. Make sure you do that. The Great Oak and TV, ladies, you did amazing tonight. So encouraged by your words and you sharing. So keep doing that. Know that you have a voice. I understand sometimes, in the room with adults, it feels like you're being pushed to the side sometimes, but stand your ground. I mean, make your voice heard when you know it needs to be heard, and never turn around and retreat. I was in the military for 27 years, and the women in the military that I've led have been just awesome. Very engaged, and also just outperforming many times their male counterparts. And I've always been in a position, where I come from. My first leadership person that poured into me was Lori Shriver. She was a chief petty officer. And, I'm 6'2", and she was only like 5'6", but she was 7 foot tall. But how she ingrained in me, instilled in me to be a leader, how to take care of people, how to ensure everyone is included in the process, was another opportunity that poured into me as well. So I just wanted to share that as well. I had the chance to see the String Queens, and they shared their story. These are three amazing artists that play string instruments. And they wanted to do some things a little different, shake it up a little bit. And they had a lot of doors closed. I'm like, you don't use those instruments for that type of music. And they said, well, you don't get to control that. I've been blessed with this art, and I'm going to share it. So they changed it up. They're playing hip hop, R&B, soul, all kinds of music, rock. They're using these string instruments to do it in a different way. So that's the power of that innovation, that spirit, that innovative spirit that come out of you. So let that be heard and let that be seen as well. So, for a couple quotes I'd like to leave you, and this ain't from nobody but Eric Faulkner. So if you try to look it up, ain't nobody quoted this. So we are not whole until we're all whole, which means that we all need to have a seat at the table. If women are excluded from that, then guess what? We're not our best as Americans. We need to have that seat at the table. And the last thing is STU. STU, ladies, shake things up. That's what I'm talking about. And I'll leave you at that. Thank you.
I hope somebody wrote down those quotes, because someday we're going to need them. I had the privilege of attending the High Hopes Dance, which is the special needs Valentine's dance. Have the city employees heard that I was there? Because I literally danced all night long. There'll be a sign like Jackie can't come in next year, but I had a great time and such amazing young people, and we danced all night. We crowned the king and queen, and it was very, very special. Jordan would not dance with me. That's a problem, but whatever. But he was so cute. He was adorable. But it was our city's amazing, and the fact that we put that on every single year and bring people together, and it's just a really, really good time. And if you saw the faces and the dancing, and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys should be on YouTube. You're amazing. Like it was that good. I loved every minute of tonight. I grew up in Ireland. I don't know a whole lot about American history, so it's fascinating hearing the history of the women of this country. I know a lot about nuns. That's my education. But it is absolutely fascinating, and I hope that each and every one of you have learned something tonight, because it really is a lot of information, and it's really a journey and a progression to see where women have come from, where they're going, and where they're going to continue to go. And so I honor every single woman in this audience tonight, from our students to our community leaders, to our business owners, to our supporters, to our oldest woman to have gone on Survivor, like amazing people in this room that embody Temecula and that bring all their strength to us and share that with us. Thank you to our mayor for being here. It's always an honor to have you in the room. Thank you to our Mayor Pro Tem Stewart for being here. Thank you for always coming to the REDI Commission meetings. Supervisor Washington, I know he left early, but he is a very, very busy man. It was very special to have him here, as well as having our city manager. And all of you, thank you for being here. And I'm going to end with one quote. Well-behaved women rarely make history, right? So let's remember that. Okay, so we're going to move on to Director Joel.
Well, Madam Chair, I just want to, again, thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the commissioners for creating this space for all of our students, for Women's History Month, for all the other months that we're celebrating. And I would be remiss if on this day, as a first-generation Indian American woman, I didn't mention out loud the names of my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Kuldeep Kaur Joel, and my maternal grandmother, Preetam Kaur Joel Thandi, who came here with nothing. They came here to this country with nothing and worked the fields of Central California so that their granddaughter could sit here and serve this community like this. For those students that are first generation, you are, and not even first generation, second generation, third generation, you are our hope, you are our future, and you can do this.
Oh, there's a glimmer, okay. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to adjourn the meeting. I will remind you that next month in April, we're going to celebrate Arab American Heritage Month. Again, it's going to be a great educational opportunity for all of us. I hope to see many of you back here. And again, thank you for your time tonight, and we'll go ahead and adjourn.